Ủa?
I saw a native person and she was and I was just like, oh, you know, she stepped down and that not
Hello, y'all. Say it with your chest. What happened?
And I think on one end I will.
Hello? Oh, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? We need a little bit more energy than that. I'm going to ask everybody to take a few steps closer to the stairs right there. We're all here as a community. I'm like trying to figure out if I should stand up here and feel like I'm on a booster step or step down here and feel like I'm short. But, oh, okay, cool. Thank you. All right. We are here today because the ceasefire is not enough, right? We are here today because Gaza is still under siege, and that siege has lasted more than 14 years. We are here today because the second the Israeli government agreed to a ceasefire, they went and raided Al-Aqsa compound, yet again terrorizing the Muslim congregants there. For us, we're all here today to say enough is enough. Free Palestine now. I don't know about you all, but seeing all the images that are coming out of Gaza and out of Jerusalem has us exhausted. it has ripped into our lives in so many different ways. My good friend Aya and I were talking about that we couldn't even wear our Eid outfits, which we were so looking forward to at the end of Ramadan, because we just didn't feel right knowing that our brothers and sisters in Palestine are being brutally murdered every single day by the Israeli occupational force. And so seeing all of you here today is a healing energy for us. And it's a healing energy for each and every Palestinian that's here in the crowd, that is feeling this pain. But you also share this pain with us because the pain that we experience as Palestinians is a pain that many people here experience in the United States. When we have conversations such as police brutality, when we have conversations as forced migration. And so we really want to thank each and every one of you for being here today with us as supporters and allies. We need you all to be loud. Our group is a little small and there's still people on their way here now because a lot of people got caught up in the rain. So until they come here, I hope you all can make up for their missing voices. Can I get that? All right, I'm gonna do a couple of chants to get you all in the mood because I don't think that's the loudest you can go. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Hell no, we won't go!
Hell no, we won't go!
The occupation's got to go!
The occupation's got to go!
Hell no, we won't go!
Hell no, we won't go!
The occupation's got to go!
The occupation's got to go!
I want you all to give a round of applause for my sister and Palestinian, Aya Ziada, who's gonna get you all in the mood with an awesome poem of hers.
She was literally tinier and now I'm too tall for the mic. Okay, it's fine. How are we doing today? Thank you. Okay, I'm a little too tall. All right, thank you guys so much for being here today. I wasn't able to be here at the last one, but so many people sent me pictures and the energy was unmatched, so I want that same energy today, okay? Okay, this is a poem I wrote when I went to Palestine a few years ago for the first time ever. My grandparents, living, breathing history books, older than the birth of occupation, forced to flee their homes in 48. 4 beautiful souls, wrinkles serving as storylines, a monumental map securing the history of the motherland. Eyes that have captured it all, occupation, siege, violence, hearts that have managed to love and remain kind in spite of the loads of loss and pain. 2 out of many that keep our ground stable, even when the bombs are shaking it with the intentions of destruction. On the other side, they stand firm. 2 souls amongst thousands upon thousands that continue to prove the fact that we exist. But for how long? From 48 to 2021, 73 years, how long must innocent souls suffer? How long must the indigenous peoples of a land live through the fear of not knowing when their turn could come next, where a foreign settler violates their humanity and strips them of their worth, their history, where a mother will lose her son to a soldier's weapon as a punishment for tossing stones with his friends, where a family will lose their father to 25 years of prison as he walks home from work, where a family's home will be invaded by an unknown family, taken over, repressing their history, their existence, where a Palestinian in the diaspora is stripped of their right to return home, to get a taste of their motherland, where our history will be forgotten and our plight unacknowledged. How long will the world drown our voices out? Watch us as we suffer in agony, as we call for our human rights, as generation after generation calls for freedom, for dignity, for liberation. How long? What do we want? Freedom! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Freedom! What do we want it? Now! Thank you.
Let's hear it again for Aya, please. It takes a lot of courage for Palestinian voices that have a continued relationship with their people in Palestine to come up here and speak, because every single day our voices are threatened in all different spheres. And there's also this really unjust list called the Canary Mission, which aims to identify American voices who speak in support of Palestinian human rights as a means for the Israeli government to ban them from going into Palestinian lands. And so, let's hear it once more for Aya Ziada, because that takes a lot of guts. Within Aya's poem, we heard her cry and her call for indigenous people to remain in their lands. And so we know that we stand on indigenous people's lands today, and this building violates the sanctity of indigenous people's lands. And so we want to take an opportunity to offer a land acknowledgement. And to offer that land acknowledgement, I want to introduce somebody who is very dear to me. So please hold your applause until I get through a little bit of this introduction here. Cheyenne McAllister is an enrolled member of Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe of Oklahoma. Notably, her great-grandmother is the late Virginia Allrunner, who was the direct descendant of the Sand Creek Massacre, which is a massacre that Colorado refuses to acknowledge, and Peace Chiefs Black Kettle and Wolf Robe. Her family comes from a strong lineage of dog soldiers, which is a Cheyenne war society. On the other hand, Cheyenne's stepmother is Saba Nashhat, a longtime Palestinian immigrant who has seen firsthand the brutality of the Israeli occupation. From stories told through both women, Cheyenne has been able to connect the dots of colonization and has been instrumental in bringing Native American awareness to today's rally. Let's hear it for Cheyenne.
My Indian name is Mionahanet. That means morning killer woman in Cheyenne. I was named after my great-grandmother. I would like to welcome you all to my ancestral homeland. This is homeland of the Cheyenne and Arapaho people, as well as the Ute people. I would also like to recognize that a lot of Native Americans in North America have suffered genocide for hundreds of years in the US. Over 50 million indigenous people have been murdered and ethnically cleansed and oppressed throughout the generations, stripped of their language, culture, and everything else. As Nadine mentioned, I am a direct descendant from the Sand Creek Massacre that happened in 1864. My grandmother used to tell me about it all the time. Her grandfather was a baby at the time, and the mother of the baby had to put him on side of a saddle horse and whip him to another camp. And so if his mother didn't do that, I wouldn't be here today. They mutilated over 150 women and children and murdered them. After they did that, they took their cavalry and marched from Eads, Colorado, where the massacre happened, and brought their body parts here to Denver and had a parade with all of the body parts. So I just want to acknowledge that, because that's where we're standing now. In addition to Cheyenne and Arapaho people, like I said before, this is the homeland of Ute people as well. If you go also to the art museum, it says Nakiv Ha'yotzim. That means we have returned home in Cheyenne. I also just wanted to say that the American Indian movement has been in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle for self-determination since the 1970s, when the Palestinian Liberation Organization helped Russell Means establish the International Indian Treaty Council office in New York City as a catalyst for the current international indigenous peoples movement. With that, I would just like to end with a quote from Russell Means. When he was at the UN, he said, "Palestinians are the American Indians of the Middle East, and the American Indians are the Palestinians of the Americas." Thank you.
That was absolutely beautiful. Cheyenne told me that she doesn't do much public speaking, but felt compelled to come up here. I don't know about you all, but I was extremely moved by everything that she said, and I felt every bit of it. What do you all think? With the land acknowledgement, We also want to recognize that the Palestinian people are not the only oppressed people in this world. That as the Palestinians were being raided by the Israeli Defense Forces, a usual for them in many ways, in Gaza and in Jerusalem and in other parts of the West Bank, we also saw the state violence that was sanctioned in Colombia. We also see what's happening in Ethiopia. We also see what is happening in Venezuela. We also see what is happening in Myanmar with the Rohingya. We also see what is happening with the Uyghurs in China. And so I wanted this to be an opportunity for us to recognize that what we have here today should also be aligned and in direct intersectionality with all of the oppression that is going on in the world here right now. So I'd really like to take a moment here for about 15 seconds, a moment of silence for us to hold in our hearts and in our minds all of the places that are continuously experiencing genocides in its many different forms and state-sanctioned violence in its many different forms as well. For that, I really appreciate it. So with that being said, I'm sorry, sometimes it just gets really difficult. I wanted to take an opportunity and pause real quickly that there's a bunch of QR codes that are floating all over the crowd. If you see that QR code, I want you to click on it with your camera phone and bring up the link tree. The link tree that's going to come up, the first green box on that says Act Now, send a message to Congress. That message to Congress asks for your just basic information, name and address, and then it automatically sends emails to those individuals. We're keeping a live track on how we do as a crowd, because for each one that's sent out, we get a notification that it was sent out. So there's a running live tally on how many get sent out, and I'm hoping that we could get at least 100 out of this crowd. Is that possible? Yeah. Okay, that was kind of weak, y'all. Is that possible? Yeah. Okay, and the reason why I ask for that is because just like PSL is holding right there, we want to stop US funding to the Israeli apartheid. $3.8 billion of your taxpayer money goes every year to carry out the violence on the Palestinian people. Are you okay with that? No. Are you okay with that? No. And that's why we want to stop US aid to Israel. Just the other day, the President of the United States on May 5th told Congress that he plans to make a little over a $700 million arms deal with Israel. Shame. People like AOC and Sanders and Talib spoke up and they said that we are introducing resolutions to say that we do not support that. And that was only possible by voices like yours. Okay, I feel like the crowd is a little down, so I'm gonna do a little bit of chanting and we'll go back into it. Are y'all okay with that? Okay, let's hear your voices.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free.
Hell no, we won't go.
Hell no, we won't go.
The occupation's got to go.
The occupation's got to go.
Hell no, we won't go.
Hell no, we won't go.
The occupation's got to go.
The occupation's got to go.
Free, free Palestine.
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 Are you all feeling a little bit better? Okay. I think the weather is kind of discouraging us a little bit. I feel like some people might be hesitant as to whether or not rain might be coming in. As far as we know, it's a no. If not, we have some shade just in case. I wanted to bring up a number of speakers now to the stage that are really going to put into perspective the parallels that we experience between the Israeli apartheid and what's happening in the United States. And you'll see that there's quite a lot of comparisons around that. But before I want to go into that, I do want to remind us that last year in May around this time, we saw George Floyd be publicly murdered and lynched for millions around the world to see, and justice was not achieved until a few months ago. That same type of knee to the neck is the same type of images that you're seeing coming out of Palestine. Because guess what? There's a strong relationship between law enforcement here in the United States and the Israeli Defense Force. If anything, they give bonus pays for them agreeing to be trained by the IDF soldiers. I don't know about you all, but I'm not okay with that.
Me neither. Fuck that shit.
In fact, just right behind you over here is the Meisel Institute, which prides itself on counterterrorism, which is completely rooted in Islamophobia in every which way, which is an extremely pro-Zionist institution, has continuously recruited law enforcement officers to learn tactics like Krav Maga, as well as a number of the other tactics employed by the IDF soldiers, and have even taken law enforcement officers here from Denver and sponsored their trips and their trainings in Israel in hopes that they would come back here and do the same as they are doing to the Palestinians. So the movement to end police brutality is a movement that the Palestinians stand behind. The movement to stop the wall from being built along the Mexico border is the very same type of wall that I'm asking to be taken down from the front of my grandmother's house. The same type of images of us saying we don't want children in cages is the same types of images that we see in Palestinian children being recruited and picked up repeatedly by the IDF soldiers, only to be thrown in prisons where they experience solitary confinement. And then not only that, but are marked for the rest of their lives. I had more than 25% of my cousins that were picked up by IDF soldiers for absolutely no reason, thrown into solitary confinement for several months, not given any type of trial by any means, and then simply told, go back into society. Those people do not have a job now. They are scared anytime anybody comes and knocks on their door. Their entire lives are ruined at the hands of the IDF soldiers. And so it's the same type of pictures that we see here by the Department of Homeland Security, which actually only came into existence after 9/11, carrying out the same type of atrocities on children that are crossing the border, on the Mexican-American border. And so I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that either. And so I wanted to bring up to the stage here today Rob Prince, who is from the Center for Justice in Palestine, to share some words with us. Rob Prince has been a continuous advocate with the Palestinians ever since I started coming up to these steps back in 2014. Rob Prince has been there every step of the way. So please join me welcoming Rob Prince.
Hello. Really, between, is it Aya who made the poems? Aya and Nadine, well, I don't have anything left to say. I mean, they've said it, actually I always have something to say, but having said that, I wanted to start off perhaps in an unusual way. I want to read some names to you, and then I'll tell you who they were. Fayez Abdelaziz, Nizar Badwan, Fuad Muhaysin, Ziad Mughrabi, Hamza Alami, Muhammad Judah, Syed Wadan. These names, I notice some of you know those names, but most of you don't. These are Palestinians from Denver. These are Palestinians from Denver who were here in 1973 on these steps, who were here in 1982 in these steps, who were here every time that Gaza was attacked after 2000. And these were my dear Palestinian friends. And so if I'm here today, they're with me, and they've always been with me. When we used to come here, maybe there'd be 20 of us, maybe 30. I mean, sometimes maybe it would get to 50. So to see the size, not just the size, but the spirit of the demonstration last week, last Friday, it was something I can't even begin to tell you what it meant to me. That finally something has broken, and what has broken has been the Zionist narrative. Okay? All right. I want to make a couple of quick remarks. First, this little Center for Freedom and Justice. Basically, what we are is an informal sister city organization. We're like 7 or whatever, that tries to do projects and stays in touch with a town in the West Bank called Beit Umar. Beit Umar is in Area C. Beit Umar has the largest percentage of Israeli youth that are in Israeli prisons. Supposedly 1/3 of all Israeli kids who are in prisons come from Beit Umar. And the purpose of this is real simple, without going into too many details. Is to maintain an enduring relationship with Palestine on a people level. My sense is those are the kind of relationships, those enduring relations. The politics follows. The politics follows. So I wanted to just mention that. But mostly what I want to talk about is racism. What racism is and what racism isn't, all right? And I wanted to start by giving you 2 more names. One you might know a little bit better. He was mentioned last week, and I was so pleased that he was. Elijah McNeil. All right. So for those of you who don't know who Elijah McNeil is, Elijah McNeil is a young man who was walking home, I think, with a cup of tea in his hand. And
Elijah McLean.
McLean. I'm sorry. Thank you. Age. Okay. Cup of tea for no reason, and the next thing you know, he's dead. There was no shot by the Aurora police. One of the many incidents we've seen in this last period, egregious racist attack. Here's another name for you. His name is Ahad Kokas, Kokas. I don't imagine too many of you know that name, but he comes from Beit Umar. And he had opened what we would call a candy store in Beit Umar and had gone to a market outside the nearby settlement, and a vigilante shot him for no reason. So whether it's in Palestine or Aurora, the racism is the same. There's no difference, okay? Those cops in Aurora, as Nadine mentioned, were trained, at least in part, by the IDF and the Israeli police. That's the connection. It's one struggle, whether it's Aurora, whether it's Denver, or whether it's Palestine. All right. So I wanted to say that. Now, what I really want to talk about, as someone who's had a little experience in this, is being accused of being anti-Semitic because you support the Palestinians. And I want to talk about this because this has had great psychological impact. You know, you support the Palestinians, and all of a sudden some Zionist friend or Zionist non-friend accuses you of being racist. All right? Now, they don't just do that. Also, in the last week, there was a young man, I think he was from both I heard him say he was from the party, Party for Socialism, and also from New Jewish Agenda. And he talked about how, because of his activism, that he didn't say who, but somebody from the Zionist community had gone to his job and asked that he be fired. Okay? Asked that he be fired. Now, it rang a bell. with me because it happened to me 4 times. I was never fired, but it was close once, and there's something about that that's really for me is outrageous. So what I want to propose here is that we think about some kind of defense organization, that when these things happen, we go to those employers and we say, no, 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 these people are fighting against racism. They're not fighting for racism. Okay, now this, again, just taking this one little step further. Here's what they do. I mean, let's put it right out there. To this crowd, it's easy to do. Zionism is racism. It's simple. Zionism is a form of settler colonialism. The Cheyenne sister who made the comparison between what happened to the Cheyenne people and what happened to Palestinian people, absolutely right on. Okay? It's not even debatable. So what is it though that the racists do to neutralize you? They accuse you of racism. That's what they do. They accuse you of racism. Anti-racists are accused of racism. How do we fight that? I'm sure there are many ways. And among some of my friends who are much better at dialogue than I am, they can talk and have discussions. What I've come to is this. Whenever I'm accused of that, I say, no, you're the racist. We have to fight that. This is an anti-racist struggle. So look, last point, we got a job to do, obviously. That job is to change U.S. policy. All right? Be it by BDS, which is basically a beautiful movement frankly based on the civil rights movement in the 1960s, based it on cutting U.S. military aid and using that money where it's needed in the cities here. Okay. Finally, this is what you need to keep in mind. Those of you who are a little younger than some of us, the Palestinian people are resilient. And their resilience will keep you, fellow Americans, from getting bitter and keep you in this in the long run, because we got a lot of work to do. I thank you. Long live Palestine.
Justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. Justice is our demand.
Justice is our demand.
No peace on stolen land.
No peace on stolen land.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Join me in welcoming our next speaker, Dr. April Alexander, who is known for her racial justice work and is a psychology professor. Through and through, absolutely phenomenal academic as well as racial justice warrior. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Alexander.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. There's a famous statement: we're not free until we all are free. We're not free until we all are free. When we talk about liberation movements, we mean freedom for all people. We mean this as a global movement. A lot of times we get together nation by nation and are thinking about ourselves, especially in the Western society where we're an individualistic culture. But when we're talking about true liberation, I'm thinking about freedom for all people. What does that look like? Even when we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, we were talking about public safety, and what does that mean? When they talk about the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, they say, well, we need these individuals. They keep us safe. How many of you feel safe? How many of us feel safe walking home? How many of us feel safe in our houses? So when I talk about liberation and when I talk about public safety, I'm envisioning a world where we're all free and we're all safe. When I think about liberation, I also think about intersectionality, which we just heard a few minutes ago. The term intersectionality has become this buzzword and has been misused so many different times. But what we're talking about is the marginalization and oppression of people of different identity statuses. Thinking about intersectionality, we need to be thinking about intersectional issues across the board. When we're talking about liberation movements, we've been